Toronto-based 21 Toys is looking to teach nebulous concepts like empathy and failure through its toys. I talked to the company's CEO, Ilana Ben-Ari, about how she came to the idea of a failure toy.
The idea with failure is that failure is a natural part of something that we're all going to experience in our lives, but we have not been educated on it. And so we're kind of living in between two worlds. So we have the world of education, where we have some amazing teachers talking about the importance of failure, but for the most part we have a system that really celebrates success, so A+. And then we have like the startup community that's saying fail fast, fail often, which is very noble and exciting, but is such a small part of a much larger conversation, which is that failure, for the most part, really hurts, and it can be really painful, and it doesn't always lead to success. And so the reason we wanted to teach failure is it's the conversations all the way in between. So it's really about failure education and better understanding how you personally deal with risk, blame, competition.
So, I mean, one thing that's so interesting about this is failure is something you might learn happenstance in your life, right? The toddler falls down and skins their knee, but they get back up. You actually had a hard time designing a failure toy. You failed at it a little bit, which is part of the creative process, right? Accepting failure. Was there some learning in that for you, just in terms of getting to a finished product here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't recommend designing a toy for failure. It was the most meta project. So I always knew since starting a toy company that the failure toy would be our second toy. And the design process, there's so many things that I learned. One of the most important ones is you're not ready for feedback until you've had a failure conversation with yourself. And so I was looking for feedback on day 2, and really I should have been looking for feedback on like day 14. So after about a year or so of struggling to get it moving, I closed all my doors, listened to myself, and had lots of conversations on what is the true essence of failure and what conversations do we want to have.
You mentioned this is the second toy for 21 Toys, which implies that there are 19 others to come. The first one was the empathy toy.
Yeah.
And that, again, is supposed to teach a fairly important but hard to kind of grasp concept.
Yeah.
How much of the learning from the empathy toy went into the failure toy?
Well, so when I started 21 Toys, it's like we're a learning and development toy company, and the empathy toy was my thesis project in university. So it was like the natural first toy that we would be teaching, not just because empathy is foundational to learning, but it's foundational to innovation. And we don't just necessarily provide toys and put them into the hands of not just teachers and business professionals, but I have a team of 15 facilitators, and we run workshops. And almost every single workshop that we ran, we talked about empathy, and the conversation naturally went into failure. It went into others' perception if I was doing well or not. The empathy toys played blindfolded, and we'd have people blindfolded hearing other teams cheering and thinking, I'm not good at empathy. And so we had a natural transition into a conversation around failure.
And when it comes to these concepts, people know, teachers know, everybody knows that they're important concepts, and we do try to kind of instill them. We know they're important values. What did you learn about empathy and failure that you could codify? Because it does have to be something that you can actually say, if you do this, you will actually learn how to fail. That's a very complicated process.
I mean, it's the whole conversation around how we teach these skills. So the World Economic Forum is saying that empathy and failure and skills that lead to creativity and collaboration are like the key skills for the future. Yeah. But we actually stopped teaching that after kindergarten. So I feel really strongly about the idea that toys teach what textbooks can't. So if we're going to be teaching creativity, it's not about reading a book on creativity. You can get some inspiration that way, but it's about hands-on learning. And so what would normally take months and months to learn, in 5 to 15 minutes of playing with somebody else, you gain huge insights into your own behaviors and the behaviors of the ones that you work with.
And I know, I mean, you mentioned this obviously is used in schools, so with kids, but also with adults in workshops. I've used it as a party game, the empathy toy. I haven't seen the failure toy yet. Adults really do like these, even though we should by now have learned both empathy and how to fail. Never too late to learn this stuff?
Never too late to learn, and studies show that we are at our creative genius prime at the ages of 4 and 5, and it just slowly gets educated out of us by the time we're about 25. So in those 21 years, we lose the majority of our creative genius. Doesn't mean it's gone, it means that we stop valuing it. And so yes, our toys are for ages 6 to CEO. So the exact same toy pieces are in the hands of kindergarten students as they are with business leaders. And with our failure toy specifically, we did testing. We went into a 4th grade class, And we asked them, what kind of advice could you give to the adults on failure? And they give us some of the most incredible insights and advice on how adults can be better at being resilient.
So how does the toy work? I mean, obviously you're trying to teach about, is it just super hard and you can't get it done? How do you teach it without making it so frustrating?
So it's not designed as a trick. It's not designed to trick you. It's a game of balance and experimentation. So you work in teams and you're given this unstable base. And that is held together with these pink safety pieces. And each team has these abstract shapes that they are challenged to build different types of shapes that at the end of 5 minutes are balanced. And so each piece has different materials and dimensions to it. Some of them will fall, some won't. And the way that you gain points is every piece that's balanced, you gain a point for that piece.
At the end of your 5 minutes?
At the end of the 5 minutes. You can lose points at any point throughout the game.
And so if I'm building it and I'm finding it hard and frustrating and things are falling off, how does the game, what am I learning about persevering in that moment?
So the game is played in multiple rounds. So the first round is really about failure and me. So when you're deciding how ambitiously you want to build, you could build with one piece, you could build with all the pieces. There's bonus points for height. So just your risk tolerance and how you navigate that is probably the first big insight you're going to get. But it gets much more interesting when you start to factor in team dynamics. So the influence of others doing better than you. As well as after the first round, if you end up getting all of the pieces balanced, you end up with a certain amount of points going into the next round that might influence if you do take risks or you don't. And all of that we play and we add different components to it so that you get different debriefs.
You knew that your second toy would be the failure toy. First toy was empathy.
Yeah.
What's the third toy? Do we know yet?
I know what it is. So the third toy will be focusing on improv. And so the idea is that empathy, failure, and improv are actually the foundational skills for design thinking. So empathy is research, failure is prototyping and innovation, and improv is about brainstorming. It's about building on others.
How do you feel about heading back into the creativity lab for that one?
I think it's been an interesting road. So I run the company. I'm also the lead designer. So really the formula that I need is I need to have an incredible team and an amazing community to support. We're in about 50 countries right now. We're running workshops and training programs. And so the idea for me to be able to leave for a few days a week to get busy on the design is probably the most important part.